All throughout Denver, marijuana buyers stood in long lines and happily waited hours for their first chance to legally buy over a counter instead of in a back alley.
And nobody's going to jail. That's the cool part.
Joining me now, Vanita Gupta, Deputy Legal Director of the American Civil Liberties Union, and Ethan Nadelmann, founder and Executive Director of the Drug Policy Alliance. Ethan, you've been working toward this day, on this issue for, if I am not mistaken, decades. Did you ever think you would see the kind of footage that we're seeing coming out of Colorado?
Well, of course. It was just a matter of time. The question was, when was it actually going to happen? But seeing what happened in Colorado these last couple of days, what's going to happen in Washington and Uruguay in the next few months, and what's going to happen in a bunch more states, you know, I can't say it was inevitable, but I think that time was on our side and people were eventually going to come to their senses about this. You know,
there are a bunch of states that are targeted for this campaign by 2017: Hawaii, Maryland, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Vermont, Alaska, Arizona, California, Maine, and Nevada. Is this going to be like gambling, where you had first one state and then two states, and then governors and state legislators started to look around and said, wow, they're raising revenue and they don't have to raise people's taxes. That seems kind of nifty. And before you know it, basically everyone has casinos.
I mean, Chris, I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I mean, this year, figure that Oregon will go next, maybe Alaska. We're going to decide about California in the next month or so. 2016, a whole bunch more states through the ballot initiative process. And then there'll be the other half of the states that don't allow voters to change the law through the initiative process, especially in New England. So I think as people look around, as they see the tax revenue being collected, as they see police being in the opportunity to focus on real crime, you'll see that shift. And not just in the U.S., also outside the U.S. What Uruguay did by becoming the first country to decide to legalize marijuana just a few weeks ago, that's going to be replicated in other countries as well.
All right, so Vanita, there are two issues here. There is the push for marijuana legalization, which is proceeding quite well, I think, in public opinion and politically. There is the fact of our war on drugs and mass incarceration. And there is some overlap, right? Do you see a nexus between those two?
Absolutely. I mean, I think what undercovered by the media right now is that what's happening in Colorado and Washington are actually racial justice victories as well. I mean, over 50% of drug arrests in 2010 were for marijuana-related offenses. That means that a huge terrain in the war on drugs is being fought in our marijuana policy. Now, is it the end-all, be-all? Absolutely not.
I want to show this chart, which is one of our favorites on the program, and it comes from a great ACLU report. So the first is the racial disparity in marijuana use, and there is essentially no racial disparity in marijuana use. Black and white people use marijuana at around the same rates. This is the racial disparity in marijuana arrest, and all of a sudden you see a massive racial disparity in marijuana arrest.
That's right. In county to county, there was not a county in the nation where the racial disparities were not very marked. Large county, small county, rural county, urban county. Our reports show that all over the country, marijuana enforcement is grossly racially disparate. And so that is why, I mean, this is all coming in the general climate of a changing attitude around the war on drugs. You had the Attorney General talking about the problems in the war on drugs and how we've got too many low-level offenders serving too long prison sentences for these kinds of crimes. This is right now, we are witnessing a change across the country in states all over the country around drug policy and marijuana policy specifically, but we have a lot of work to do to truly kind of undo the war on drugs.
Yeah, that I think is the key point in terms of using this as a wedge to do that. And I wanted to read for both of you this David Simon quote. He gave this interview, and he had this kind of contrarian take on it. David Simon, of course, the creator of The Wire, who hates the war on drugs, as I do, and as I think you both do. He said, having removed much of the white middle-class interaction with drug enforcement from the equation, those who are championing marijuana reform and ignoring the overall disaster, the drug war, will be perpetuating the fundamental and continuing injustice. Ethan, do you worry about that? Do you worry about a relatively powerful constituency being removed from the fight to completely get rid of the war on drugs?
You know, it's a minor concern, but if you look comparatively around the world or elsewhere where there's been reforms like this, I think that the concern is going to be overblowing. I think what we're going to see is that more and more focus on trying to address the problems of mass incarceration in America. I mean, we can't continue having the highest prison rate in the world. You see Democratic governors and Republican governors saying it's time for change. You saw Attorney General Holder actually going out of Medellin, Colombia last month and giving a speech to foreign security ministers in which he said we can no longer sustain these U.S. policies. So I think we're seeing change ahead.
Ethan Nadelmann for the Drug Policy Alliance and Vanita Gupta from the ACLU.
Thank you
both. All right, that is all in for this evening. The Rachel Maddow Show starts now. Happy New Year, Rachel. Good evening.
Happy New Year, man. It's great to see you.
Great to see you, too.